Oh my gosh, you guys, I am so glad to be back. It has been a whirlwind of a couple weeks. I honestly didn't have any shoots. I had a couple shoots, but like I was sick and I lost my voice. So it kind of worked out perfectly that I could stay home. And I mean, I was still working and editing and everything, but I, at the very beginning when I lost my voice, I was trying to do family shoots and I couldn't use my high pitched voice to get the kids' attention. So it was real rough. And then I did have a couple weddings over the weekends, and that was also really rough, just like having to step away and blow my nose all the time and like yell for family photos. So it's been tough, but I'm glad to be back. I, for the first time, am not like coughing every 5 seconds and like I can actually talk without it like straining and hurting my throat. So I was like, all right, we're doing podcasts today. This is going to be a good day. I'm super excited. It is finally May. I always batch record my episodes, as you guys know, but it is the first Tuesday of May, which is May 7th. I'm super happy that it's May. I mean, not that I'm ready for summer heat, but I am ready to lay out and go to the pool and just like, summer days. It's time. It's time. But with all that being said, today is a very good day, not only because I'm back recording a podcast, but I have a guest on the show today, and her name is Rachel. And if you guys know anything about copywriting, you know that it's not easy or fun. It can be, it should be, but sometimes it's not. And so she knows that and has created this amazing, well, multiple resources for us, but also just like a team of copywriters that will help you with the copywriting on your website. And so I loved getting to pick her brain a little bit and just find out more about that process and some common misconceptions that we have with copywriting. And she even at the very end gives us some tips and tricks for if we're doing our own DIY copywriting, which she has a free or she has a resource for that as well on her website. But she also is sharing with us a discount for all of her products, which is awesome because she has email templates, she has questionnaire templates. So you can check those out in her shop, and she is giving us like 15% off, and you can find the discount code and links for everything in the show notes. But go follow her on Instagram. She's at Green Share Stories. Her reels are super relatable. They're funny and they just kind of like hit you right where you need it. You're like, oh, yep, I'm called out. I needed that. So I was very excited to have her on the show today. And I'm going to let you guys get into it after we have our 30 seconds first, just as an intro of our 30 seconds of silence. But we're going to take just a few moments beforehand to get in the right mindset of copywriting. I want you to think about what got you into this business in the first place. Where did you start? What was your why? And think about moving forward, how you want to continue to grow and build upon that why, but also not, keep it fresh. You don't want to keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. So how can you protect your energy and protect your creativity? I just want you to take a couple, it's literally only 30 seconds, so we're not going crazy here, but I just want you to take a couple seconds and envision all of that. Why, remember your why. Because sometimes when we first start out and we're writing the copy on our own website by ourselves, we're just like, oh, I just want to take pictures. I just want people to pay me to take pictures, But let's go a little bit deeper than that, right? What is the true, real reason of why you started that? Why do you love doing what you do? Why do you continue to do what you do? And then we'll get into our episode with Rachel. Hello, welcome everybody. Today I am joined by a wonderful woman. Her name is Rachel, and I'm super excited to have her on the show today. We are going to chat about all kinds of things copywriting, but I want to have her introduce herself for a little bit first and just tell us where she's located, how she got into copywriting, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Rachel Greiman. I run Green Chair Stories. It is a copywriting collective for photographers. So all we do is write websites for photographers. I know it sounds like the nichiest of niches, but you guys hate writing.
It's so true. It's so true. We need help.
Yeah. So we never run out of clients, which is nice. But yeah, I am a photographer myself. I was a photojournalism major many, many moons ago in college. And so words and photography kind of just always went together for me. They just both made sense in storytelling. And then I worked in nonprofits for a long time doing both photography and writing. And then I struck out on my own as a family photographer, and I was in all the Facebook groups, and I realized like how much help people want with their copy. And I was like, oh, I've been doing this for years. I have a degree in this. I can absolutely help with that. And then it just kind of ballooned really, really quickly starting in 2016 until now. So I have been doing this for almost a decade, and I absolutely love it. I love helping people kind of hit the easy button on finding words to describe what they do and that really, really communicate to their ideal client.
Yeah, that is really cool. I love that you have such a background in it and you've been doing it for so long before you ended up deciding to start your own thing and help us photographers
Yeah.
out because man, we need it. I know a lot of times like photographers struggle with a lot of the admin, like the business side of stuff, and copywriting is one of those things that falls under it because it's
Mm-hmm.
like I just like I'm good at taking pictures and editing them,
Mm-hmm.
and beyond that it's kind of like I need a little bit of help. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad you have created this job. There's a place for you. There, I always say there's someone that can do that for you. Like, if,
Yes,
you don't want to clean
100%.
your house, someone can do that for you. You don't want to write your
Uh-huh.
copy on your website, someone can do that for you.
Absolutely.
So you said,
And
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say what I think is really interesting is that photographers probably write more than they photograph, and even if they hate it.
Yeah.
And that is like such a startling realization to a lot of people, but any business owner you could say that for, but especially photographers, because all you do is email. And then
Yeah.
not to mention you're emailing, you're texting, you're writing blog posts, you are writing your website, you're
Instagram
writing Instagram
captions.
captions. Like all you ever do is sit down and write.
Yeah. Oh my
And
God. I just now thought about that. I
mhm.
never even made that connection, but you're totally right. We do.
It would be a really interesting experiment to actually like log how many hours a month in 1 month a photographer is
True.
writing versus photographing.
That
Like
is
not editing, just
Yeah,
shooting.
just shooting. They
Uh-huh.
always say that like being a photographer is literally 10% of the job
Yeah,
because
exactly.
and then like 90% everything else,
Mhm.
driving,
Mhm.
taxes, business, admin,
Yeah.
back end work, all that kind of stuff. Oh my gosh. And then you branch into other things like if you want to start, educating or doing other things,
Mhm.
your time is even more split and probably creating even more opportunities for you to have to write more.
Totally. Totally.
Oh my gosh. So where is it that you think photographers get hung up on the most when it comes to copywriting? Literally just not knowing what to say? Or is there like a place in the process that you've noticed that when photographers come to you and they're like, look, I'm redoing my site or I'm building one from scratch.
Mhm.
I don't even know where to start. Like, I don't know what to do next. Like when it comes to writing, how do I write about myself and my
Yeah.
work?
I think the challenges are different depending on where you're at in your business journey. Like if you're a new photographer and you've never written a website before, I think the hardest part is not just copying what everyone else does,
Yeah.
not like plagiarizing, but like I know a lot of new photographers when they're setting up their website for the first time, they just pull up their 5 to 10 favorite photography sites
Mm-hmm.
and just try to follow the kind of like
Like the
standard.
theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even the layout and the look and it's
Mm-hmm.
not just with writing. I think they just get really overwhelmed trying to do their own thing and they forget that they are an artist as well, and so they get to have some creative freedom in there too. And there's not a blueprint to follow when it
Right.
comes to creating a website. There's certain rules, yes, that I think apply to everyone, but I think a lot of newer photographers just end up sounding like just this weird blend of everyone else. And then when you're
Mm-hmm.
speaking to everyone, you speak to no one. So it just kind of becomes this very vanilla experience.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of our clients are further along in their journey. They've been in business 3 to 5, sometimes 10 years, and they either are just getting really clear on who they want to work with and what they want to photograph. They've kind of done everything
Yeah.
in the first couple of years and they're like, okay, this is what I know that I like. How do I get more of these clients? That's probably the the most common one that we deal with. And I think for them, it's more like organizing. They know what they want to say, they know what they want to offer, they know who they want to work with, but they're like, how do I organize all
Yeah.
of these thoughts that I have in a way that's compelling and is going to get somebody to reach out to me?
Yeah. How do I make it
So
pretty?
yeah, yeah, and not even pretty, but just convincing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are like, at that point, they feel really confident in themselves and they
Mhm.
feel like I've got this. I know what I'm after now. I've done the first few crappy years of saying yes to everything, and they've done a lot of things they don't like. And so there's this feeling of accomplishment of finally getting to this place where you know what you want to do, but then they sit down to write a site and it's all about them and their perspective and what they've learned rather than focusing on their client and how
Mhm.
their client is served by the photographer's experience.
Mhm.
So we have to do a lot of flipping of that perspective. Like, don't talk about you, talk about you only in the way that it serves your client.
Yes. And that is big. I honestly think that has become something that's been pretty well known, or at least more widely talked about within the
Yeah.
last couple of years. Because a lot of times when you go to people's About Me pages on their website, like just take that for example, because that's a pretty common place where most people
Yeah.
talk. They're like, I have to talk about myself. And
Uh-huh.
I think there's a fine line between wanting to talk about yourself and you need your clients want to know a little bit about who you are and
Totally.
see what they can connect with beyond like, I like to read books. Oh, do they like to read books? That's cool. We can
Mhm.
talk about that. But beyond that, it's more talking about how you're going to help the client and like problem solving for them, and just, kind of being able to say like, oh, I know that you feel uncomfortable in front of the camera. I know that you haven't gotten family photos updated in 5 years.
Mhm.
Like, I'm going to be there for you to help you and fix it. And we're going to make it all better, and just making it a very like client forward based text instead of just
Mhm.
like, here's about me. I picked up a camera when I
Yeah.
was X amount, X years old and blah, blah, blah.
Totally. And I think that is honestly a result of the influencer age because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us follow influencers and their
Mm-hmm.
entire brand is who they are. Their
Yeah.
entire brand is the water bottle they carry, the
Mm-hmm.
drink that they get when they're out
Yep.
shopping at
Their
Target for their
Starbucks
treats.
order.
Totally. And it's very specifically a personal brand. And while I think personal branding has a place in photography, I think sometimes the websites that people use are so focused on that kind of influencer vibe of like,
Yeah.
love me and everything I'm about, which works when you're an aspirational influencer. Like when you're selling products like an influencer, you want people to aspire to be like you. When you are a
Yeah.
photographer, you are serving a client. And those are two
Yes.
very different perspectives and very different messages on a website.
Very different industries too. And that's such a good point to think
Mhm.
about because, you know, like you said, you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok, half the things that we see are just someone talking about their products that they love or something, their skincare or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And they're a person trying to sell multiple different things, basically, whether it's like
Yeah.
they're not actually selling it, but like getting affiliates or they're, through marketing budgets or whatever, they're getting paid somehow. But they're talking about multiple different things, whether it's their gym clothes, their water bottle, their makeup,
Mhm.
their travel suitcases. Like,
Yeah.
they can talk about a wide variety of things that they love, that they use. But we
Mhm.
are just photographer. I say that lightly, but
Yeah.
we're just
Yeah.
photographers. Like, we're selling photographs. Like, we're selling
Yeah.
the experience of getting your photographs taken, whether it's family photos or wedding photos or whatever. And so you have to limit what you talk about a little bit because you're
Mhm.
not trying to just like get a brand deal from someone.
Totally. 100%.
You're trying to convince the client to invest in you and not the product that you use.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just feel like sometimes when I read websites, people don't know what to say, so they just fill out whatever was in the template. And it's like if you
Oh,
bought a
yep.
template that was meant for an influencer, that isn't meant for you. So
Right.
they don't want a list of all of your favorite foods and
Mm-mm.
drinks. They don't care
Nope.
about that unless
Mm-mm.
that is a
Like
common thread that you see with your clients.
your brand
That's
or
when you
your,
talk
yeah.
about things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
when you talk about yourself, you just need to do it in a way that serves them.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's like you brought up a good point earlier about how like when you're early on in your career, you pull up your favorite 5 to 10 photographers, you kind of look at their
Mhm.
websites, you're like, okay, what's the vibe here? How do I kind of match this? How do I get into being a full-time photographer? And it's so hard because I feel like once you see it, it's hard to do anything differently because like
Mhm.
the way that things are worded, the way that things are laid out, like everything is kind of in the forefront of your brain. And so when you're sitting down trying to write your own copy, now all you can think about is what you read on other people's websites. And then you
Mhm.
basically just end up like accidentally regurgitating what they said somehow
Mm-hmm.
in a different way. And like you said, we end up just like blending together and looking like every other photographer that's out there. We just look like a copy of the
Yeah.
last person they looked at, which is really hard to stand out from clients when they're looking at your website, because they're going to be like, oh, well, this girl sounds exactly like the last girl who sounded like the person before that. And I can't remember who it was that I
Mm-hmm.
saw that I really
Yeah.
resonated with, because they're all the same.
Yeah. They are going to remember how they felt when they looked at your images and they read your words. And if you sound and look like everyone else, then they're not going to remember you.
Yeah.
Like, that's just what it comes down to. You're not memorable. It's not that you're bad. It's not that you're wrong. It's not any of those things. It's just that you're
Right.
not memorable.
Yeah.
And here's the hard truth for a lot of photographers to understand is that there's a lot of really good photographers. You know, there's a lot, like, I'm a photographer and I can think of 3 people in my like literal neighborhood that are as good as me,
Yeah.
and if not better.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, if I want to get hired, I need to offer something different. I need
Mm-hmm.
to present myself in a way that's appealing to my specific clients. And I think that's the main key, is that we're not just putting out a photography site and
Mm-hmm.
putting out our offers and what we want to do. We are speaking to a group of people that we should know intimately. So the reason that photographer you admire, the reason her site works well and she's getting booked is because she's speaking to her clients, people
Mm-hmm.
that she knows and connects with. So her clients should be different from yours. You should be able to understand what makes your client different, and then that will make your website copy different.
Yeah, it's very important to have copy that will not only help you stand out from the other photographers, but
Mm-hmm.
attract the clients that you want to be working with, you know? Cuz if you're out there talking about like the people who are free spirited and love adventures and, just like are down
Mm-hmm.
for anything, but like in reality you actually want to work with like people who like studios and like more controlled
Yeah.
environments, and like they're more like clean and like the clean girl aesthetic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be attracting the people that want to do like waterfall hike sessions with what you're
Yeah.
saying on your website. And then
Yeah.
you're going to sit there wondering, why do I keep getting these adventure sessions when like I just want to work in a studio, or like I want to work I only want to do families and not
Right.
couples or whatever. And you have to think deeper than just like what photographs you're presenting on your website or your social media, but like what are you saying about it too?
Totally, totally. But that's such a good point, because I think a lot of people are like, well, I have this killer photo from this session, but it's nothing like I want to photograph.
Yeah.
It's like, well, don't show it anywhere then.
Yeah.
Like, don't show a single photograph that you wouldn't want to do again,
Yeah.
because that is that people are going to be drawn into what they see first, and then they're convinced to reach out to you by what they read. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like those two things need to work so well together to create a clear and consistent message.
Yeah, so true. I mean, even I think about back to like the early days of my blogging and Pinteresting. I did like a waterfall session in COVID times 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and blogged the crap out of it, made reels
Mm-hmm.
about it, like, because it was really fun and I loved it. And at the time, I wanted to do adventure sessions. I wanted to do things like that all the time.
Yeah.
And now I don't really do that as much anymore, and I don't travel either. Like
Mm-hmm.
unless it's like somewhere crazy, but like I'm not just going to like drive to Kentucky and shoot a wedding.
Right.
It's like just far enough where it is a hassle and not like,
Yeah.
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 So anyways, people will still inquire with me based off of like waterfall stuff that they have
Yeah.
seen. And I'm like, should I just take that blog down? Cause like
Yeah.
I keep getting,
Probably.
yeah, I
If
probably
you don't
should.
want it.
Yeah. People will send me screenshots and they're like, I love this photo. Let's do this. Let's go hike here. And I'm like, that's like a half day adventure hike. And like, it's a
Right.
3-hour drive for me. And like, I'm not doing that anymore.
You should just gift that blog post to another
Yeah.
photographer.
Here, you can have this.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Yeah, well, and what's so interesting about I feel like the world of copywriting is, like you also said, people who come to you aren't always just beginners. They are people who have been doing this for years. And so
Totally.
it's kind of nice to know that if you're 5-10 years into this and you just
Mm-hmm.
kind of not for lack of a better word, like you're burnout. You're like, I've been writing my own website copy for 10 years. I've done this for so long and I just need like a fresh way to say
Mm-hmm.
basically the same thing that I've been saying the last 10 years. I need a new perspective on it.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can
I
kind of come
think,
in and help like seasoned vets too, which is cool.
yeah. And that's who we prefer to work with, honestly. It's people that have worked themselves out of the job of being the copywriter in their business.
Mm-hmm.
We're all DIYing in the beginning. We are all wearing every hat in the beginning of our business because we don't have any money, but we have a lot of time. So
Yeah.
our favorite clients are the ones that have been working for a while and they're like, just someone take this off my plate. Someone just do this for me because it's such a big project. I am a professional copywriter. And when I wrote our new website a couple years ago, it took me like 2 months of dedicated energy to sit down and get it done.
It's a lot.
So it's a lot. And it is, I will say, it is harder to write about yourself than it is to write for someone else. But that's why people come to us that are later in their business. And a lot of times they're pivoting into something. They're like, I've been doing this for a long time and now I want to offer education or mentoring, or I want to, slow down my adventure travel sessions and I really want to focus on my local area. So not only do they just need it done, but they need fresh perspective coming in and seeing how they could talk about this new season of their business. Because a lot of photographers, it's very rare that a photographer will like shoot weddings for 20 years straight because it's an exhausting job and it's really hard on your body and you sacrifice your weekends and all of that. So I very often see people coming to me looking for a pivot. Either they really nailed down their ideal client and they want more clarity around how to talk to them, or they're pivoting into an entirely new genre.
Yeah. That's interesting that you say that it's interesting to write for other people than write for yourself, because
it's so much easier.
I feel like it's the opposite. Like if someone said, hey, like write something about Rachel, I'd be like, so tell me how that process works. Like when you are working with a client, like how do you get in their head? Is there like questionnaires or something that you give them that you kind of try to match their brand voice or like the vibe they're going for? And how do you put yourself in their shoes to get in there, to get their copywriting done?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I'm not attached to it emotionally the way that you are. Like if I were writing for you, like the way I am for myself, I overanalyze things for myself and I'm in my head about it. But when I'm writing for someone else, it's just data. And when I say data, this is what I mean. We will interview 3 clients of our clients. So if I was writing for you, I would have you put me in touch with 3 of your favorite clients. If you could photograph this session or this wedding every day for the rest of your life, you would be happy. And these are the people that we want to talk to. So we have like 30 to 45-minute calls with each of these past clients to understand not only what they loved about working with you, but also why they said yes. What made them say, this is worth the investment? Because when you can figure out why your favorite client said yes to you, you can figure out what you need to write on your site to tell people that right away. You can highlight that piece of you and what drew them to you in the first place. So those interviews are super important. We have like a 40 question questionnaire that the photographer fills out. We make everybody take the Enneagram personality test just because I think it's like it's like a cheat code on getting into their like motivations as a person. Are you more like super high achieving? Are you more peacemaker? Like, what do you do? Obviously it doesn't like dramatically change how we write. It just helps us understand them a little bit more going into our first call with them.
Yeah.
And then we read every testimonial that's ever been left for them, every social media post depending on how much they post, we can go back years, and their blogs, and we use their current site and we go through that current site with them. And you're like, why did you write this? What were you trying to say here? And we talk about what they like about their current site, what's working about it, what isn't working. So we can kind of get rid of what's not working and come up with solutions to make the new copy work, and also take what is working and keep elements of it. Usually we're not throwing out everything. We're just making it better and then creating a new message around the things that are working in their business.
That is a really in-depth process. I did not expect, I didn't even think about like interviewing past clients. Like I would expect like a questionnaire, and like maybe going through the site and stuff and figuring out what you like and what you don't like. But I never would have thought about the other things. That is very cool that you can get a really well-rounded viewpoint of them as a photographer and what they want to achieve.
Totally. It's really important to us that we're not making anything up when we write someone's site. We want it all to be grounded in something, because I think a lot of photographers just sit down and they're like, well, I got to fill this box in my template, so I'm just going to put something here. And that's like the opposite of what you want to do with copy. Every word, every section, every testimonial should serve a purpose. It should have a job. You give every page a job, and then you give every section on that page a job. You are trying to direct them somewhere. You're trying to lead the client on a journey. You're trying to build a case for why this photographer should get hired. So when you look at the site that way, it's more about just taking all the data we compile and assembling it into the right places so that those pages can do their job of getting people to reach out to the photographer. So there's a very old copywriting quote that from like the godfather of copywriting, Eugene Schwartz. And it says, copy is not written, it's assembled. And that's essentially what it is. You're just taking data that you have learned, in our case, from past clients and from the client themselves, and you're just putting it in the right spots.
I like that. Was it copywriting isn't written, it's assembled?
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Copy
that.
is not written, it's assembled.
Okay.
So, and that's why I always tell people not to start with a blank page.
Right.
Because you essentially should just be taking the words that other people have said about you and transforming it into copy that sells you to other people. You know, you're not sitting there making up your flowery feelings about your work and your art. Some of it can be that, but
Yeah.
mostly it's just saying, hey, this is what other people said about me. Do you trust
Yeah.
them?
Yeah, that's so true. And I think it makes like the work a little bit easier when you're able to use other people's words about you
Mm-hmm.
than coming up with your own, you know, and
Oh,
having
yeah.
yeah, and people like that trust factor, being able to know that
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, this is like other clients enjoy working with me because of X, Y, and Z. And if I also value that as a client, then I will more than likely enjoy my time with this photographer as well.
100%.
That's really cool. How long does this process usually last for you? Like
Yeah.
writing copy for a client?
Well, we have really, really strict schedules because we only like to write for one photographer at a time. So there's 3 writers on our team. And so all of the client calls start on a Monday. And so when we start, like, let's say I was starting this Monday with
Mm-hmm.
someone, I will do all the interviews with their clients this week. And
Okay.
then and they'll fill out their questionnaire. And then as the like owner, I'll go over everything and tell the writer, like, this is what I want you to focus on the call. These are the questions I want you to ask. I pull out things that I think are interesting or that we need clarification on. And then the writers will talk to them for like an hour or two, depending on how long winded both of them are. And so the interviews are already done. The questionnaire is already done by that point. And then the writer will write the first draft that week. And so they'll get it back to me or another writer on the team by Thursday. So they've taken
Okay.
4 days. And then we deliver the edited draft because we edit it together the next Monday. So if your call is on a Monday and you start, you get your first draft the next Monday. And then
That's intense.
it's intense, it's fast. And then that photographer has from Monday through Friday to edit with the writer.
Okay.
So they might have another call to clarify some things if we didn't get a section right or something. But usually it's just in the Google Doc back and forth for 5 days and you're just like editing, editing, editing. But they have our full attention. So we're only focused on them. And so that allows us to create a website in 11 days, essentially.
Yeah.
But also it allows us to be really intentional. And because we only write for photographers, I don't like to overlap.
Yeah. Right. And I like that you only focus on one photographer at a time. And I was going to ask how it works since you have a team. Like, how
Yeah.
involved are you in each project? Or is it just kind of like split up, you know, like
Yeah.
you work with one person, the other writer works with another person, and you guys are all just simultaneously working on
We are.
Yeah.
We are. We're all simultaneously working, but I have my hands on every single project. Like I will review every questionnaire. I will edit almost every site at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very involved. I see every inquiry that comes to our inbox. I personally respond to all of them. So I'm very involved in all of it. And honestly, like I've written so like literally hundreds of websites at this point that it's better for me to be the editor than the writer at this point because my writers are fresher than I am. And I've seen them all. So I can just read it and be like, that's cliche. I've seen that on like 7 other sites.
There you go.
It's like I have this institutional knowledge in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of like the overseer of the project.
Yes.
Just to make sure that like what's getting put out isn't just regurgitated information from some other photographer.
100%.
That's really cool that they have the fresh perspective, but you still have the wide background and knowledge that you can
Totally.
It's good to have both. Like
Yeah.
you know, rather than being one way only or the other, you have both.
I mean, they've worked for me now for 4 and 3 years.
Yeah,
so
but
they
still.
know a lot too now.
Yeah.
They probably know just as much as I do, but it is nice to like every single site we write has at least 2 writers on the project.
Yeah, that's really cool. And you said how many people are on your team?
There's 4 of us, including my assistant.
Okay. And then do they do copy too, or do they just do some back?
No,
work?
she does. She's an SEO expert. So she got trained 2 years ago in SEO. So that's like an offering that we add on if people want it.
Nice.
Some people, SEO is not a one and done thing. And so I didn't include it in our packages because I don't want people to pay for something that's not going to benefit them.
Yeah.
So they can always add on Jess's SEO services if they want it, but not everybody does it.
Yeah, that makes sense. How often do you say that you need to refresh your copy on your website?
It depends. If it's working for you, then don't. You know,
Yeah, true.
if you're getting inquiries from people that you like and that you want to
Mm-hmm.
be working with, then your copy is working for you. And copy is just like it's the end of the marketing funnel in a lot of
Yeah.
ways, or your
Yeah.
website, I mean, because there's so many different ways to get people to your website. Your copy is simply converting the people you get. So if people are like, well, I'm not getting any inquiries, I'm like, well, how many like visitors are you getting? You
Yeah.
know, if you're only getting 10 a
Like,
month, that's not the copy's fault.
yeah.
You know, that you need to either implement better SEO, you need
Mm-hmm.
to start marketing on Pinterest or Instagram. Like you need to pay
Mm-hmm.
for ads. If you're not getting people to your site, your copy isn't speaking to
Is it
anyone because
gonna,
no one's seeing
right.
it.
Exactly.
So it depends on the photographer. But honestly, if you're switching your ideal client, that's like a
Yeah.
really important time to switch your copy up.
Right.
But if it's working, don't change it.
Yeah. That totally
But I
makes sense.
usually think with a rebrand too. Like when people want a
Yeah.
fresh look, it's probably time to update the copy as well. And you might not need to do a full like copy rewrite. It like we have a glow up option where we just go through and help people edit their copy. It doesn't have to be a full rewrite every time.
Yeah, that's true. Just kind of like a little refresh. I've
Yeah.
always been curious of how the process works when you're like getting a website designed and you're also getting copy written by
Hmm.
someone else. How can you explain a little bit about that? Because like in my
Yeah.
brain, I'm like, don't they need each other at the same time? How
Yeah.
does it work?
Yeah, no, it is a complicated process, but it doesn't need to be. Honestly, if you just get your copy done first, your designer will love you forever. The worst
True.
thing for a designer is to have to chase it down from you. I cannot tell you how many inquiries we get where we're like, that they say, I'm in the middle of a rebrand and I was supposed to have my copy to my designer like a month ago and I thought I could do it and now I can't, which is fine. People think that
Mm-hmm.
they can do it and some people can and do it beautifully. That's why I have a DIY guide to help you. Like some
Yeah.
people are good writers, they just need help. But a lot of photographers do not understand what an undertaking it is, especially if you're paying a professional designer to create a gorgeous website for you. You want to have words on that work.
Yeah.
And you don't just want to throw up
Absolutely.
filler stuff.
Yeah.
So we get a lot of inquiries like that where people are like mid rebrand and they're like, thought I could do it. I can't, help me, which is again why our process is so fast because
Yeah,
we
because
want
you
people.
understand that you're on a deadline.
Yes, totally. And designers are so grateful to us
Yeah.
when we deliver them this perfectly wireframed, beautiful copy document that has every word that needs to go on the site. Because designers usually are not copywriters and they don't want to be helping you with your words. It's not their job.
Mm.
And I freaking love designers because there's nothing worse to me than handing somebody beautiful copy and then them designing it themselves in a
And it's
way
an
that
ugly
makes it
website.
look bad. Because it's like the copy, nobody's going to read it if you're
If
presenting
you're
it in a way
exactly.
that's like a wall of text, you know?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've always wondered because I thought that the designer would be grateful to have the copywriting first because then they can go in
Yes,
and lay it out visually, like, oh, this is a good paragraph. Let's like wrap it here and like or split it up
totally.
and do it here and here, versus being like, I'm just gonna leave a spot here, and then the copywriters
Oh,
go in and
yeah.
they're like, okay, well, we'll just chunk it differently or
Oh,
whatever, you know?
totally.
Yeah.
Copy leads design always. Every designer worth her salt will tell you that.
I know a lot of designers who are just like, well, I'm waiting on, or even just people who have gotten the rebrand done and they've paid to get
Hmm.
their website
Yeah.
redesigned. And then it's just sitting there because they don't have copy done. And so it's like, okay, well, I got my website done and approved and everything like 2 months ago. And it's just sitting there because I don't have any copywriting. And
Hmm.
that's so sad
Hmm.
because you spend a lot of time and money and effort like rebranding and doing all this stuff. And then it's just kind of sitting in limbo, you know?
Totally. And don't get me wrong, we do that all the time. People come to
Yeah.
us and they're like, I have this beautiful site. Can you write copy that fits? And we're like, yeah, absolutely. Is it
Yeah.
ideal? No. Can we do it? Yes. And we
Yeah.
will. And especially because a lot of photographers don't show it, it's such an easy
Yeah.
platform to just switch things around really quick
Mm-hmm.
that we are happy to help clients that are like, I have this template that you need to write within. And we're like, yeah, we'll probably make a couple suggested changes and add sections and stuff, but we can do it. And we
Yeah.
don't mind doing it.
That's great. What do you think are some common mistakes or even just like misassumptions? Is that a word? Misassumptions that people make about copywriting? Something that you see often that you're just like, this needs to stop right now.
I think the big one is just that it's not important. You know, a
People
lot of
think it's not important.
photographers, yeah,
Yeah.
people want their work to sell them. And
Hmm.
yes, I'm not saying that people's work is not beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, I hope my own work is beautiful, but I know at the end of the day, there's a lot of other photographers who can do it just as well as I can. So your words are like I always say this, your photos are what get people to look at you. That's what
Mhm.
draw people in. They're like, oh, I
Mhm.
like that style. I'm into that. But
Mhm.
then they're going to go hunting for a reason to trust you. And your
Mhm.
photos do not build trust
Mm-mm.
because they don't say anything about the professional that you are, the
Mm-mm.
experience that you have, the
How you
fact that
made them
other people
feel.
trust you. Yeah, how you made them feel, all of that. So I think that's the biggest like misconception about it, is just that people don't think it's worth it. And
Yeah.
so, or they want somebody to do it, you know, just get the job done
Yeah.
for, you know,
Just
a
to have
thousand
it
dollars or
done.
something.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not, you need to research.
Yeah.
If you are not basing your copy in research, it doesn't mean anything. It's just fluff. It's just
Yeah.
nice words somebody strung together.
Hmm. So it's kind of like your photos are like your curb appeal. Like if you're
Yep.
talking about like
Yes.
looking for a new
Yes.
house, like your photos are your curb appeal. People are driving by down the street and they're like, "Oh, that looks nice. That house looks nice." But how are
Hmm.
you actually going to get them in the door and like
Totally.
come by your house and say, "Oh,
Oh my
this
goodness,
is look
Kaylee,
at
I'm
the
going to steal that from
do
you.
it,
That's
girl."
such a good analogy. It's
Yeah.
so true. No,
Yeah.
your words are like the beautiful kitchen that has all
Yeah.
the appliances you want.
Mhm.
Like you come in the house and you're like, oh,
This
I
is why
could,
I want to live here.
yes, because everybody knows you spent all your freaking time in the kitchen, especially
Uh-huh.
if you have kids.
Uh-huh.
And the kitchen is everything you wanted. Okay,
Mhm.
now I'm into it. Now I'm
Yeah.
going to reach out. Now I'm going to go to the
Mhm.
basement. Now I'm going to start looking at the little tiny
Yes.
details. And
Yes.
so your copy is what makes people go from interested to reaching out to you. That's what
Mhm.
gets people into your inbox.
Yeah.
Because so rarely, especially with a wedding photographer, will someone just look at an Instagram feed and reach out.
Mhm.
It's normally like they're going to go to your website. They're
They
going to
might
look to
stalk
see
you on
if,
TikTok or
yeah,
Pinterest.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're going to do a little bit of research before they start reaching out because their time is precious.
Mhm.
So even as a mom looking for family photographers, I am probably not going to reach out from an Instagram feed. I'm going to go
Yeah.
to a website and be like, what are they all about?
Yes. So true. And I mean, I think a little bit has to do with the fact that we're photographers too, so we
Yeah.
want to know like more
Yes.
about them. But
Yeah.
totally, I mean, it's a big investment in general. Like whether it's
Hmm.
weddings or families, like you're paying a good amount of money to get a service done. You want to know that the person that's going to be taking the photos for you is going to be not just like obviously taking pretty pictures, which they can see on your social media feed, but once they go to your website, they can understand, oh, like we'll get along with her, or like she has kids and
Hmm.
she talks about them, and I'm sure like their favorite shows are the same, or some, like they're going to
Totally.
be able to be feel more related or relatable to you if you have good copy on your website.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm trying to think of another misconception for you about copy. Maybe that it's easy.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
People
that
are like,
it's,
oh,
I
it's
know I
just
already said
writing
that.
words. Yeah, I
Yeah.
can do that. It's easy.
Yeah. Hmm.
I
And
don't
I
think
think a big
so.
one that I mentioned before is just like, oh, I bought this template. I'm just going to fill it out. And like the worst thing you can do
Yeah.
is write your copy in the back end of a website because it really puts you in a box. It's literally giving you a box to fill.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you don't want your message to try to fit into somebody else's idea of how this is laid out. You
Yeah.
want to lay out your copy first and then go in and make the design work for you.
That's so interesting. That's again kind of just pulling it back to how we said copywriting should hopefully come before the website design, but it doesn't
Yeah.
have to. But it works
Right.
better that way because you're rearranging the site based off of how the words look and need to be presented and not just
Yeah.
like the website as a whole or like the photos.
Well, and going back to like you're building a case to hire you, you
Mm-hmm.
need to present information in a very specific way in order for your ideal client and your ideal buyer to understand them and to absorb them.
Yeah.
So that's not going to be the same for every photographer.
Right.
So it's really important to lay that out first before you're just filling in boxes.
Yeah. Filling in boxes is boring too.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's
You're
just
not
like
going to be inspired doing that.
no. It's kind of like when you had papers to write in high school and stuff, where you were given like a certain amount of page limit that you had
Yeah.
to do, and you're just like, I'm just gonna write as many filler words as I can
Uh-huh.
to get this box full.
100%. Yes.
And then you just turn in some like boring generic paper and you get a B, and you're like, oh well, I mean, I didn't really try that
Yeah.
hard, so
Right. I'll take it.
yeah. Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I feel like I could talk about copywriting all the time because there's so much that goes into it. If you've done your website before, whether you've done it yourself or you've gone through the process of hiring a copywriter or designer or whatever, you know like how important it's, even if you've been doing this for 10 years or 2 months, like you know how important copywriting is. Is there anything, like you said, you have some DIY stuff that
Yeah.
you offer for people? Do you have
Yep.
any, do you want to talk about that a little bit, or like give us any tips for if you're going to do your own copy, then maybe
Yeah.
give us some tips?
Yeah. I think the best tip is to talk to your past clients, to just do what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
And
I
that's what our
never would have thought
DIY
about
guy,
that.
yeah, that's what our guide is. Our guide is like, I just took the exact steps that we do for our clients and I wrote them out in like 100-page Google Doc so you can
Dang.
do it for yourself. And because I don't think new photographers should hire us. You
Yeah.
need to have that couple years of like testing and figuring out what you do and don't like. And you shouldn't invest thousands of dollars in a website like design or copy until you know who you're trying
You
to
know your
attract.
client. Yeah. You
Yeah,
or where
because
your
that's the
what your
most
work is
important
going to
thing.
be. Yeah.
100%. So that's why we created that guide. So the first tip in there, and I have all the questions to ask your past clients in there, is just talk to your past clients. Figure out why
Yeah.
they hired you. What made them say yes to you? What did you do or say that made them go, that's for me? Another tip in there is rather than like sitting down at a blank page, just talk. There's a dictation tool in Google Docs. Like I'm a verbal processor, so
Mhm.
sometimes if I get stuck writing, I'll just turn on the dictation tool and just talk about what I want to say
Mhm.
as if I'm talking to like my husband or my best
Yeah.
friend. And then usually I will get to my point through
Yeah.
talking. And then I can
True.
just delete all the dumb stuff I said
Yep.
and just pull out like the golden nugget. So
Yeah.
some people just have a hard time with the cursor and actually writing,
Yeah.
or
It's
they
kind of
like sit down to write.
intimidating.
Yeah, and it
Just
comes out like super formal and
mhm.
not conversational, and it's really important that your copy feels like a conversation and not like you're just talking at someone. So I really recommend just like dictating. And along
Mhm.
those lines, people always forget what a session was like when they go back to blog it or talk about it on Instagram later. I would come up with an organizational system where you are just creating a voice memo on your phone in your car after you get done with the photo shoot.
Mhm.
And you just say, this is my favorite thing about the day. This is what I loved. This is how I felt. This was a special moment. You know, it literally can just be 1 or 2 minutes. But if you keep that voice memo and then you
Mhm.
just listen to it when you sit down to write about it on Instagram or a blog, it will like dramatically transform your memory.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I can tell that that also helps if you have someone else writing it for you, because then I can
Yes.
send you, like, if I have someone who writes blogs for me, I can
Yeah,
send her those things and she gets more information than just the questionnaires or the emails that I've sent her clients. So
absolutely.
being
Yeah.
able, but yeah, I love the two things you said about dictating. I did that all the time. I would sit there with my phone
Hmm.
on the notes app. I just did it on the notes app or whatever. And I
Yeah.
would just talk and say, talk about myself. And, you know, like you said, you get rid of the fluff, you get rid of the weird stuff, but eventually you just have to verbalize it and talk about it. And then you can figure out exactly what you're trying to say. And then being able
Hmm.
to use the reference that and like reference the voice notes after weddings or sessions, like the little things that you picked up on and little moments throughout the day that you notice. I'll try to write them down, like
Yeah.
little things like, oh, he was writing his vows while he was eating
Hmm.
Chick-fil-A at the
Yeah.
table, you know, stuff like that. And so I'll like write it
Cute.
down real quick. And then like at the end of the day, I'll try to do a voice note and like I can add to it or whatever. But yeah,
That's
those are
adorable. I love
yeah,
that.
those are very good points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are big tips. Another tip if you're DIYing your site is to wireframe. So like as you're writing, make sure you're including like page breaks or, you know, putting a box around your call to action. That way, you know, you're giving that section a job. You're
Right.
always telling your reader where you want them to go. So putting in a hero image, using different fonts for your headlines and your subheads and your body. That way you can kind of see and get a feel for how it would look on a designed website.
Yeah, you can kind of visualize it already
Hmm.
without it being like official or like laid out, or it might not be the exact fonts you're using, but like it's close enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's cool too, because then I feel like it gives you the, like you said, the idea of what it's going to look like finalized. So you can start to like
Hmm.
write it out and be like, oh, this, I feel like this could be concise. It could be shorter a
Yeah.
little bit because I'll just like elaborating a little bit too much here.
Hmm. Hmm. Totally.
That's true. That's a good point. Well, can people find the DIY on your website, I'm assuming?
Yes, we have a
Cool.
shop. So we have the guide, which is like our number one seller. And then we have questionnaires for wedding photographers and family photographers to use to send to their clients to get better information about them.
Love that.
And then we have email templates. So we have email templates for wedding photographers and family photographers. It's one for every single step of your workflow. So there's a shop on
Awesome.
our site if you're interested in that
Cool.
stuff. And I can give your people a discount. What code do you want?
Ooh, let's make it something fun. Copywriting isn't hard. That's too long. I don't know.
You can email me, but you can put
Yeah,
it in
I'll
the show
figure it
notes,
out.
whatever the code is going to be. But I'll
Yeah,
give
I
your
will.
people like 15% off.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. They are going to love that. And having those email templates they're game changer. And I love that you have
Yeah.
them separated for families and for weddings
Yeah.
because sometimes people don't do both, you know?
Yeah. They're
But
different.
yeah. And the workflow is different. What you're going to say to them is different. I have
Mm-hmm.
emails that like a prepping for engagement session versus prepping for like a family session. They're
Mm-hmm.
like the frame is the same, but the details and stuff. And like I link a
Yeah.
blog about like preparing for your engagement session. Like
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to send that to a family session, but
Right.
yeah,
Right.
but having
Exactly.
those is a game changer and not having to like write about it, like write them out every single time, it's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Cool. Well, I'm going to
So
leave all that stuff in the show notes so that people can
great.
easily find
Thanks.
it. Yeah, of course. We need more resources like this. So thank you for
Yeah.
creating them.
Yeah. And then I have a ton of free stuff on Instagram.
Ooh,
I post reels all the time,
we love
just
those.
at
They're hilarious.
just at Green Chair Stories, just is our username. So, and then there's like 10 years of blog content for free too.
Oh
So I'm
my
all about
gosh.
free.
Hey, we love that too.
Yeah.
Oh my
Same.
gosh, cool. Well, do you have any last minute or parting words that you'd like to share with everyone listening?
Yeah, writing doesn't need to be as hard as it feels. There's a lot of help out there if you want it at different levels. So don't be afraid to ask for it and don't be afraid to prioritize it. It's a big deal. I know everybody's trying to sell you something and is trying to tell you that their system is what you need to make your business explode. But at the end of the day, like use your intuition and figure out what like the pillars of your messaging is, and then it'll become easier to sell.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good parting advice.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This was
Oh
so
my
fun.
gosh.